Hello, and welcome to my channel Stories of Injustice. It started at a funeral, crowd silent, cameras rolling, a mother holding her daughter's flag. Then a sheriff stepped in, pulled a gun, and tried to make her a headline. What he didn't know, she outranked him. And she had receipts. Within days, his entire network was exposed. If you think you've seen stories like this before, you haven't. Stay to the end. The twist hits harder than you think. This didn't go viral because of the badge. It went viral because a black woman in uniform didn't flinch. And because the people watching refused to look away. Watch the whole story. Then ask yourself, what would have happened if no one hit record? Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Drop your city and time zone in the comments. We want to see how far this story is reaching. And after you watch, tell us. What part hit you the hardest? It was supposed to be a day of honor. A final goodbye beneath an open Alabama sky. Selma National Cemetery sat quiet that morning, except for the soft rustle of wine through the oaks and the rhythmic cadence of dress shoes on gravel. Rows of mourners stood in solemn silence, military personnel in full uniform, veterans with wrinkled brows and weathered medals, and civilians holding tissues tight in their fists. All gathered for one name, Captain Lena Cole, killed in action, Syria, age 29. At the head of the service stood Brigadier General Lena Cole, her spine straight, her eyes dry but stormy. No woman in the history of the U.S. Air Force had risen higher with skin like hers. None had carried so many battles on her shoulders, on foreign soil and at home. And yet, even with her daughter's flag folded neatly on the podium before her, Lena didn't waver. Her pain, though volcanic, was silent. Until a shadow moved through the crowd. He wasn't supposed to be there. Sheriff Dwayne Colton, steel-jawed, smug-eyed, and hated in whispers, strode between the mourners like he was patrolling a crime scene. His uniform clung tight over his thick frame, hand resting just a little too close to the gun at his side. He passed the honor guard without a glance, pushed a young private aside with enough force to nearly send the man into the marble headstones. Lena turned at the commotion and saw the glint, a flash of silver steel. Colton raised his pistol, not into the air, not toward a threat, but pressed it to the side of Lena's head. A gasp echoed across the cemetery like a sudden storm. Dozens of cameras snapped to life. Some caught it in photos, others in video. You think that uniform makes you special? Colton hissed, his voice like gravel soaked in oil. You think you're better than us? Lena didn't blink. She didn't move. Not when the barrel dug into her temple. Not when her father collapsed behind her in grief. Not when her son Jason, her only remaining child, tried to surge forward and was stopped by a half-circle of armed deputies. She just whispered 4 words. Not today. Not today. It was like a signal. Lena didn't reach for the gun. She reached for the flag. The triangle of folded cloth that had rested untouched on the podium. The last piece of her daughter's service. Of her sacrifice. Her hand closed around it tightly, and then bang. A shot cracked the air, sharp and directionless. People screamed. Some ducked. Others raised their phones higher. But Lena was still standing. It wasn't her who had fired. And it wasn't Colton either. Deputy Frank Wilson, standing on the perimeter, had discharged a warning shot. She's reaching for a weapon, he shouted, a lie so thin it blew away in the breeze. It didn't matter. Colton tackled her, slammed her into the dirt, the same soil that was about to receive her daughter's remains. Her uniform was stained, the flag knocked from her grip. His knee drove into her back like she was a criminal, not a decorated general. You're under arrest, he barked for the cameras. Assaulting an officer. Attempted weapon grab. The absurdity of it didn't stop the zip of the cuffs. It didn't stop the red light on the microphones flickering to life, or the anchors back in D.C. clearing space on their evening segments. Across the cemetery, reporters scrambled. A local pastor dropped to his knees. Veterans in dress blues stared in disbelief. A woman whispered, "Is this really happening?" And then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice rang out, measured, commanding. Stand down. This is over. A man stepped forward, holding a badge that gleamed in the sun. FBI. Special Agent Carl Ramsey. He didn't yell. He didn't draw. But in his voice was the kind of authority that didn't beg for obedience. It expected it. We're taking custody of General Cole, he said. Colton didn't budge. Not right away. But something in the air shifted. Because even the men loyal to him were now surrounded. And someone had caught everything on camera. Someone whose video was already halfway uploaded. And the next 24 hours would set fire to the lie of small-town justice. 3 days before the funeral, Brigadier General Lena Cole stood at Gate 17 of Montgomery Regional Airport, her back straight, her jaw set, her heart heavy. She wore her full dress uniform, not for show but because this flight mattered. It was taking her to Atlanta, then on to D.C., the beginning of the journey to retrieve her daughter's body. Captain Brigadier Cole, 29, killed in Syria, her only child. The announcement came over the intercom, boarding for military personnel and priority travelers. Lena stepped forward, presenting her travel orders, military ID, and a folder stamped with the Air Force seal. But the gate agent didn't even look at the documents. Random screening, a voice called from behind her. Cold. Familiar. Lena turned. And there he was, Sheriff Dwayne Colton. But today he wasn't in a sheriff's uniform. He was in TSA blues, badge crooked on his chest, a smug grin hiding in plain sight. What the hell? Lena muttered under her breath. Colton folded his arms. Step aside, ma'am. Need to run some extra checks. I already cleared security in Atlanta. I'm on official military orders. I said, step aside. He leaned closer, voice low, and oozing malice. You think that uniform means something here? You're in my town now. Two other agents appeared. Deputies, moonlighting for TSA. Lena recognized the tattoos half hidden under their sleeves. Local good OL boys who followed Colton like dogs on a leash. They flanked her without speaking. People in line began to stare. Some pulled out phones. Others looked away, too polite, too afraid, or too used to it. Colton took her ID, held it up like a fake $20 bill. Brigadier General Lena Cole, he said loudly. What's a black woman like you doing with stars on her shoulder? The words hit like a slap. Sharp. Public. Meant to humiliate. Lena didn't flinch. I'm here to bury my daughter, Sheriff. A fallen Air Force captain. Now unless you're here for security protocol, step aside. He grinned wider. Oh, we're gonna process you. All the way. And he did. They made her remove her jacket in front of everyone. Her medals dangled awkwardly, like trinkets. Her stars, the insignia of her rank, gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights, but no one treated her with respect. The other passengers watched with an eerie stillness, as if they were witnessing something unspeakable, but not unexpected. They examined her ribbons like they were fake. They searched her carry-on, every zipper, every pocket. Loud, mocking questions followed. Where'd you get this uniform? Did you buy those medals online? Must be affirmative action, huh? Lena's breathing stayed measured, but her fists clenched behind her back. It wasn't just harassment. It was calculated. A public takedown dressed up as protocol. And then, as if summoned by instinct, she heard it. Mom. It was Jason, her son, a civil rights attorney who had driven all night to meet her. His eyes scanned the scene, narrowing the moment they landed on Colton. What's going on? He asked, pulling out his phone, already recording. Back up, son, Colton barked. Federal checkpoint. Interference gets you arrested. Jason took a step forward. That's Brigadier General Lena Cole. She cleared security. This is racial profiling, harassment, and you're doing it in front of witnesses. Colton turned, his finger jabbing the air like a threat. I'll have you arrested for obstruction. But Lena reached out, gently placing a hand on her son's arm. Let it go, she whispered. Not here. Not now. Finally, Colton threw her documents back at her like garbage. You're free to go, he said, as if he was doing her a favor. No apology. No explanation. Just the smug, satisfied look of a man who thought he'd reminded someone of her place. As Lena and Jason walked away, she turned just once, just long enough to see Colton bring a phone to his ear. She couldn't hear what he said, but she read his lips. Target confirmed. She's here. And in that moment, Lena knew. This wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about security. It was about power. About a black woman in uniform who refused to bow. About a racist sheriff who saw her not as a grieving mother or a national hero, but as a threat. A black woman with too much dignity, too much authority. And he hated her for it. But what Colton didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Brianna had left something behind. A USB drive. A folder. A truth too dangerous to bury. Lena wasn't just coming to bury her daughter. She was about to dig up a system built on silence. And when she was done, no badge, no gun, no uniform, and Selma would be safe. The screen door creaked like it always had. The porch light flickered like it used to when Lena Cole was a child, sneaking out for fresh air or watching her father clean his boots after long shifts at the base. She stood on the front steps of her childhood home in Selma, Alabama, where every board and crack whispered memories. Some sweet. Some jagged. The same white paint peeling from the siding. The same creaky floorboard just inside the hall. But today, the house felt colder. As if it too had lost something. Or someone. She hadn't stepped foot here in years. Not since her daughter left for officer training. Not since Lena had become too much of a target to feel safe in the town she grew up in. But now she was back. And the weight of that return hung on her like a second uniform. "Baby girl," came a voice from inside. Walter Cole, Sr., stood just inside the living room, cane in hand, posture still ramrod straight at 85 years old. His skin was dark as iron, and his eyes, soft but alert, held decades of survival. Of fighting wars in foreign lands, and then coming home to fight quieter, dirtier ones. They sat in silence for a while on the couch. Two soldiers, two generations. Neither speaking, both knowing the other was breaking inside. "I heard about the funeral," he finally said. "Heard what that sheriff did." Lena nodded once. "He did it in front of Brianna's casket. Her flag." Walter's jaw clenched. "They've been trying to break us in uniform since the first time we wore one. Ain't nothing new. Just new cameras." She exhaled sharply, her fists tight. "It's not just about me, Daddy. It's about Brianna." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Her name was written across the front in Brianna's handwriting. "I got this 2 days ago," Walter said quietly. "No return address. Just showed up. I didn't open it. I knew it was meant for you." Lena's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, a USB drive. And a note. "If anything happens to me, give this to Mom. Trust no one in uniform but her." The room spun. Lena rushed to her old bedroom, dusty but familiar, and pulled out a battered laptop from the closet. She plugged in the drive. And what she saw took the breath clean out of her. Folders. Dozens of them. Names. Photos. Videos. Audio recordings. Internal memos. Surveillance. Dates. Each file detailed the lives of Black service members returning home from deployment, targeted by local police, private contractors, even military liaisons. Pulled over. Harassed. Beaten. Framed. Some quietly discharged. Others locked away. At the center of it all, a group called the Defenders of Southern Order. And leading them? Sheriff Dwayne Colton. Lena clicked on a video file. It was grainy, recorded from a bar security camera. A group of men in uniform laughing, slapping backs, taking shots. "I told that uppity sergeant if he wanted to act like a man, he could take the cuffs like one of them said. Another voice cut in clear, smug, unmistakable, Colton's. She came back with ribbons on her chest and an attitude. Had to remind her Selma don't hand out medals for being mouthy. Lena paused the video, her breath sharp. Racism wasn't new. But organized, systemic violence targeting Black soldiers, coordinated by local law enforcement and military insiders? That wasn't just hate. That was treasonous. And Brianna had uncovered it. She'd documented it. She had collected testimonies, body cam footage, tampered police reports, and even conversations from encrypted group chats. Brianna had gone undercover, and it had gotten her killed. Lena sat back, her vision blurred with fury. Her uniform felt like a betrayal. Everything she had believed in, the military honor, the American ideal, the idea that service bought you respect, it all collapsed. Because they didn't see her daughter as a hero. They saw her as a Black woman who didn't know her place. And for that, they had sent her to die. Outside the room, Lena heard a door creak. Mom. It was Jason, her son, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a young Asian-American officer, nervous, glancing behind him like he'd been followed. "This is Officer Bryanshin," Jason said, voice low. "He worked with Brianna. He's been helping her gather this stuff. He's still on the force." Shin stepped forward, holding his phone with trembling hands. "She was right," he said. "About everything. And they're watching me now. They found out I was feeding her info. I have to disappear." Lena's voice came out in a whisper. "Why didn't anyone do anything?" Shin swallowed. "Because we're outnumbered. They've got judges, military liaisons, politicians. And every time we tried to escalate, the evidence vanished." Jason added, "This isn't just about Brianna. This is about the entire system." Lena looked at them both. Then back at the laptop screen, at her daughter's meticulous notes, her final mission, her digital voice saying, "Don't let them win." And in that moment, something in Lena shifted. The mother, the soldier, the grieving Black woman who had been spit on by the system she gave her life to serve. She stood up, not just to fight, but to finish what Brianna started, because they thought they could bury the truth with her daughter. But they forgot who raised her. The bar didn't have a name. Not officially. Locals called it Wolf's Tavern, though the sign above the door was long gone, just rusted bolts where a plank used to hang. The windows were tinted with grime. The jukebox in the corner hadn't worked since the Bush administration. No one came here by accident. Only those who were invited. The door creaked open just after 9 p.m., letting in the damp Alabama heat and the smell of stale tobacco. The room fell quiet for half a second as Sheriff Dwayne Colton stepped inside, his boots heavy, his badge catching the yellowed bar light. He wasn't alone. Behind him came Judge Dale Whitmore, white-haired, whiskey-voiced, and with a career built on sentencing black men with a smile. To his left, State Senator Mitchell Briggs, wearing a starched white shirt, a gleaming pin on his collar, and the kind of practiced Southern charm that smelled like rot underneath. 3 more followed, senior officers from surrounding counties. All white, all powerful, all deeply loyal. They gathered in the back room, behind a half-broken vending machine and a soundproof door. The meeting began in silence. And then Colton dropped a manila folder onto the center of the table. Inside, surveillance photos of Lena Cole. Her at the airport. Her at her childhood home. A grainy image of her hugging her father on the porch. A photo of Jason, leaving what looked like the Montgomery Federal Building. She's digging, Colton growled. Brianna had too much. And now she's got it all. The room tensed. Judge Whitmore chewed the end of his glasses. Then we handle it quietly. Like we always have. No, Colton snapped. It's too late for quiet. You think this is some grieving mother? She's not just anyone. She's a damn general. National media already picked up the footage from the funeral. There's pressure now. Senator Briggs folded his hands. So we don't bury her. We bury her name. He said it like it was nothing. But to Lena Cole, her name, her reputation was everything. The uniform, the stars, the bars. They hadn't come easy. They'd been carved from sacrifice, from endurance, from rising through rooms full of men who said she didn't belong. And that's exactly why this room hated her. Because a black woman in power was a threat they couldn't tolerate. She's got files, Colton continued. We think Brianna gave her something. Evidence. Surveillance. Names. Could be she knows about our deployments. About Syria. That caught the room. One of the deputies, a younger man with nervous eyes, shifted in his seat. Wait, are you saying she knows about how we redirected her unit? Colton didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone at the table understood what was on the line. They hadn't just harassed black service members. They'd manipulated military deployments, intentionally sending black soldiers into more dangerous zones. Fabricated intelligence. Adjusted mission parameters. Field assignments randomly reassigned to troops with the wrong skin color. Some of those soldiers had died. Brianna Cole was just the latest. And now her mother was sitting on a war chest of secrets. Judge Whitmore leaned back, his voice smooth. We don't need to kill her. We just need to destroy her credibility. Frame her. Leak something. Plant evidence. Maybe suggest early dementia. PTSD from service. Make her look unstable. Colton nodded slowly. We pinned something on Jason too. Civil unrest. Financial fraud. Whatever it takes. But if the FBI gets involved, one of the deputies started. They won't, Whitmore interrupted. They're already up to their necks in other fires. One black general in a red state won't make the front page for long. We just have to stall. Keep her busy. Scare her if we have to. Colton grinned, bitter and full of poison. We'll remind her where she is. This is Selma. And we don't let women like her rewrite the rules. But as they talked, as they schemed, as they clinked glasses and muttered about restoring order, they didn't realize something had already changed. Because across town, Lena Cole wasn't hiding. She was preparing. The files were copied. The video of Colton laughing about Brianna had been backed up and uploaded to an encrypted cloud. Jason had already reached out to a contact at the Department of Justice. And Officer Brian Shin, quiet, shaken, was preparing to disappear. Lena sat at the kitchen table in her father's house, the walls covered in photos of military service. Her hands were wrapped around a hot mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. You ready for this? Jason asked. She didn't answer right away. She stared at the computer screen. At the grainy image of Brianna smiling in uniform. At the folder labeled, Operation Homebound, the targeting of black soldiers in the South. Then she spoke. I was never scared of war, Lena said. Not once. Not in Afghanistan. Not when the bombs hit near the base. Not even when we had to drag wounded through sand under fire. Jason listened. But this? This isn't war. It's something worse. Because the enemy doesn't wear another country's flag. He wears a badge. He smiles at your funeral. He hides behind protocol and says your daughter's death was a tragedy, while laughing over drinks. She looked up, her eyes sharp. They thought killing Brianna would bury the truth. But they forgot who trained her. They forgot who raised her. Jason swallowed hard. So what do we do? Lena leaned in. We go public. But not just yet. First, we make sure we have every angle, every link, every face. And then, her voice didn't shake. Not once. Then we burn it all down. The motel sat just off Highway 14, a squat building with peeling paint and a buzzing neon sign that blinked vacancy even when it was full. Room 208 didn't have much, a twin bed, a stained chair, and a TV bolted to the wall that never left the Weather Channel. Officer Brian Chin hadn't slept in 2 nights. Not since the last message Brianna had sent him appeared on his burner phone. They know. Meeting postponed. I'm being followed. Watcher 6. That was 3 days before she died. Now he sat in that motel room, heart racing every time a car pulled into the lot. The blinds stayed closed. The gun in his lap felt heavier by the hour. There was no denying it anymore. The people he'd been working beside, people he'd sworn to serve with, were the same ones plotting against the Constitution itself. The defenders of Southern order weren't just a few racist old men whispering in back rooms. They were organized, armed, protected by state power. And now he was the last person alive who knew what Brianna had been about to expose from inside the system. A knock at the door made him jump. Once, then twice, followed by the code, 3 quick taps. He cracked the door. It was Jason. Behind him, in the parking lot, Lena Cole stood beside a black SUV, scanning the shadows like a soldier on patrol. Brian opened the door fully. His hands trembled as he let them inside. I thought you weren't coming, he said. Jason shook his head. We almost didn't. There was a tail. We lost it near Old Mill Road. Lena stepped forward, eyes locked on Chin. Tell me everything. And don't leave anything out. Brian exhaled, sat on the bed, and opened the duffel bag at his feet. Inside drives. Labeled. Sealed. Numbered. Brianna didn't just collect files, he said. She was mapping the whole structure. Who was connected to who? Judges, officers, contractors. She traced money kickbacks, payments to private security firms for setting up black vets. Even one DOD official. She got names. Lena leaned forward, her voice sharp. And what about her deployment? Brian nodded grimly. That's the worst part. Someone inside the military reassigned her to a more dangerous zone. Her unit had just been pulled back. They were supposed to rotate out. But then, magically, they got pushed forward again. No explanation. No paperwork trail. Just an email from a generic military liaison server. Jason cursed under his breath. She was set up, Lena whispered. My daughter was murdered. Brian met her eyes. Yes, ma'am. And they'll do it again if we don't act fast. A silence fell over the room. The kind that buzzes with fear and fury all at once. Lena broke it. Can they trace you? I've changed devices, burned IDs, rerouted through 3 VPNs. But they've got reach. I can't stay here much longer. Jason looked at the drives. We leak this now, we lose control. It's not enough for a news cycle. We need an indictment. A full federal case. I know, Lena said. But we also need protection. For all of us. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a second phone. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Go ahead. This is General Lena Cole, she said. I'm invoking my emergency security protocol under Military Whistleblower Act, Title 10. I need transport for myself, my son, and a critical witness. Evidence is in hand. We're compromised. We need safe extraction immediately. There was a pause on the line. Then the voice said simply, We're on our way. She hung up. Brian blinked. Who was that? An old contact, she replied. Deep in federal intelligence. They owe me a favor. Jason cracked a small smile. You always have a plan? Lena didn't smile back. Always. But just as the tension began to lift, the sound of tires on gravel made all 3 freeze. Jason peeked through the curtain. 2 trucks, he muttered. Sheriff Department plates. Armed. Brian's pulse spiked. They found me. Lena stood tall, calm despite the sweat on her brow. We hold until the feds get here, she said. No one moves. No one fires. Not unless they breach. Outside, heavy boots hit pavement. Flashlights sliced through the night. One of the deputies shouted, "Room 208. Open the door or we'll kick it in." Jason looked to his mother. "Orders." Lena raised the gun from her hip. "Check the chamber." "Hold the line," she said. "They're not here for justice. They're here to erase a witness. We're not letting that happen." Inside that cramped motel room, with secrets worth killing for and death at the door, 3 people, 2 veterans of war and 1 brave cop, prepared to face down the storm. Because they weren't just protecting themselves. They were holding the line for every soldier whose uniform wasn't enough to shield them from hate. And for one daughter, silence before she could finish what she started. The hallway in the secure federal safe house felt more like a bunker than a building. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting sterile shadows on the concrete floor. The air smelled like fresh paint and recycled air. Lena Cole sat alone in a debriefing room, fingers steepled beneath her chin, staring at the laptop screen in front of her. A dull ache throbbed in her temples, but she refused to blink, refused to look away, because what she was seeing confirmed the thing she feared most. Her daughter's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a planned erasure. Across the table sat 2 federal agents, their badges clipped to plain gray suits, their eyes shifting between Lena and the screen. They'd come from D.C. that morning, flown in without uniforms, without backup, quiet men for a dirty job. The screen displayed an email trail. One thread after another, all marked classified, all pulled from Brianna's recovered hard drive. From commandops.liason@dodlink.net to Major C. Jensen, 433rd Division Logistics. Subject, Deployment Adjustment, Alpha, 52. Effective immediately, reassign unit to forward base Collet. Elevated need for perimeter ops. Orders confirmed. No appeal. Major Jensen's reply had been short. "Are you sure? We just rotated them back. They're exhausted." The response was chilling. Affirmative. Priority target. Rotation canceled. Keep it quiet. 1 week later, Captain Brianna Cole's unit was ambushed, caught in a hostile zone they were never supposed to be near. And now, sitting in that concrete room with a screen full of digital ghosts, Lena felt the breath leave her chest. "They sent her there," she whispered. They knew. Agent Mercer, the older of the 2, nodded grimly. "This liaison account doesn't appear in any official registry. Whoever ran this operation knew how to ghost themselves through DoD infrastructure." Jason stood behind Lena, arms crossed, his anger barely restrained. Why? What the hell did Brianna uncover that scared them this much? Agent Singh tapped the keyboard, pulling up a folder labeled homebound_04C, internal DSO transcripts. The screen flickered, and then text began to scroll. Transcripts of secret meetings, chat logs, voice memos, inside jokes about cleaning up the bloodlines in uniform, mockery of soldiers with accents, slurs disguised as strategy, names of high-ranking black officers tagged with red flags, untrustworthy, too vocal, dangerous optics. At the center of the documents was a term Brianna had flagged multiple times. Deployment filtering. Singh explained it in a quiet voice. They used predictive profiling, identified non-white officers and routed them toward higher-risk missions, then justified it with fabricated intelligence. Lena clenched her jaw. And no one stopped it? Mercer shook his head. They were protected. From the inside. DSO has cells in local law enforcement, veterans councils, even a few defense contractors. It's bigger than any of us guessed. Lena sat back, her voice hollow. My daughter thought wearing that uniform meant she was safe, that she belonged. Jason's voice cracked. They used her as a test case. She got too close, and they needed to shut her down before the truth leaked. Lena's eyes were locked on the screen, on her daughter's final note in the archive. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. But you did. You're stronger than them, Mom. Show them what justice looks like. Agent Singh leaned forward. General, we need your permission to escalate this. This kind of exposure, it's going to rock the Pentagon. But we can't move without your green light. Lena didn't hesitate. Take it to the top, she said. Every file, every name. Make them answer for what they did. But even as Singh began uploading the files to the encrypted DOJ network, Mercer's phone buzzed. He answered, eyes narrowing. Then, what? Say that again. A pause. Then he looked at Lena and Jason. They've already moved, he said. Cololton and Whitmore. They filed a sealed indictment against Lena, fabricated claims. Conspiracy, evidence tampering, sedition. A federal judge in Mobile approved it overnight. Jason's voice rose. That's impossible. She hasn't broken a single law. Mercer didn't blink. It doesn't matter. In this state, with their people in place, all they need is a signature. Lena exhaled slowly. So they're trying to flip the story. Paint me as a traitor. A rogue general. Mercer nodded grimly. And they've already leaked the first article to a local paper. Headline reads, Decorated officer under investigation for leaking classified military intel. Jason's fists clenched. They're framing you. Lena stood, straightened her jacket. And for a moment, she didn't look like a grieving mother, or a target, or even a general. She looked like a woman with nothing left to lose and a country to confront. Then we don't wait, she said. We go public. On our terms. Today. Because the files they buried had been found. And now the country was about to learn what they'd been willing to kill to hide. The night air outside Wolf's Tavern was thick with heat and tension. Crickets chirped in the grass along the roadside, but inside the bar, the only sound was the clink of glass against wood and the low hum of voices too careful to rise. The men gathered in the back room had no idea they were already under surveillance. Sheriff Dwayne Colton paced behind the table, jaw tight, sweat darkening the collar of his uniform. Judge Dale Whitmore sat quietly, nursing a bourbon, while State Senator Mitchell Briggs stared at his phone, the screen's glow reflecting in his glasses. I'm telling you, Colton hissed, they've moved faster than we thought. That drive she had, it's out. Someone leaked it to the DOJ. They've got names, ranks, ops files. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. How? We scrubbed everything. Briggs snapped. We thought we scrubbed everything. Turns out the dead girl wasn't working alone. Dead girl. He said it like Brianna was collateral damage. Not a daughter. Not a soldier. Just another name to bury. Colton slammed his fist on the table. She gave it to her mother. Lena's running a full-on media play now. Interviews. Podcasts. There's a leak scheduled for 6 a.m., the full archive. They're calling it the Homebound Files. Whitmore leaned forward. Then we shut it down. We take back the narrative before the press can spin it. How? Briggs asked. She's protected now. Feds all around her. Cameras. Eyewitnesses. Even if we file more charges, it'll look retaliatory. Whitmore's eyes glinted. Then we don't use the system. We use the streets. Colton understood. I scare tactic. A message. We leak something ourselves, Whitmore said. Old footage. Edited. Make her look unstable. Say she's fabricating the whole thing out of grief and PTSD. Then we drop a new headline. General's son linked to militia group. We spin Jason into a threat. Briggs nodded slowly. Discredit the family. Break the public trust before the documents land. But what none of them knew, what none of them could even guess, was that just beneath the floorboards of that dusty back room, a federal surveillance mic was capturing every word. Across town, in a secure vent parked behind a feed store, Agent Singh adjusted his headset. Agent Mercer stood beside him, arms folded, eyes locked on the transcript streaming in real time on his tablet. Got them, Singh said. They just implicated themselves on tampering, conspiracy, obstruction. Mercer didn't smile. Keep rolling, he said. The more they talk, the deeper they dig. Inside the bar, Colton lit a cigar with shaking hands. She doesn't scare easy, he muttered. That's the problem with black women in uniform. They think they earned the same respect we did. Whitmore chuckled. She thinks the Constitution protects her. The room laughed. But Mercer, miles away, didn't. He reached for his secure phone. It's time, he said. Back at the safe house, Lena stood in a crisp uniform, her daughter's folded flag resting on the table behind her. The press conference was scheduled for the next morning. A national outlet had agreed to stream it live. Jason entered the room with an alert in hand. They just tried to leak a doctored video. We caught it in time. Lena didn't flinch. They're scared. Good, Jason replied. Means we're close. But then Singh's voice came through the encrypted line. They're meeting now. We've got audio. And you're going to want to hear what they said. Lena stepped closer to the speaker. The moment she heard Colton say, dead girl, her throat tightened. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. Until the pain in her palm distracted her from the weight in her chest. Jason whispered, Mom. Lena shook her head. No, she said. Let it play. And as she stood there, listening to the men who killed her daughter laugh about it, something in her solidified. The grief didn't recede. It burned hotter. But it became focused, controlled. She was no longer just reacting. She was planning. At the end of the transmission, Singh said quietly, we can move tonight. Raid the tavern. Catch them in the act. Mercer cut in. We wait until morning. Until the press sees the files. Let the court of public opinion open first. Then we deliver the indictments. Jason looked at Lena. What do you want to do? Lena turned to him, her voice steady. Cold. We let them talk. We let them dig until they hit bedrock. And then she said the words she'd been waiting to say for weeks. Then we bury them. It was just after 8 a.m. when Lena Cole stepped in front of the podium. The sky above Washington, D.C. was still streaked with morning gold, but already a crowd had gathered outside the Department of Justice building. Journalists jostled for position. Boom mics leaned like vines over the metal barricade. Phones were raised. Lenses clicked. Behind Lena, flanked by agents and attorneys, stood Jason and Officer Brian Chin. And to her left, a glass table holding the flag that had once covered her daughter's casket, now folded into a perfect triangle. The murmurs quieted when she approached. No one needed to be told this wasn't just another press conference. This was a reckoning. Lena stood tall, her dress blues pressed crisp, her medals gleaming in the sun. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it carried like thunder. My name is Brigadier General Lena Cole, she began. And I'm here to speak the truth my daughter died trying to bring to light. She let the silence stretch before continuing. 1 year ago, Captain Brigadier Cole was killed while deployed in Syria. I was told it was an ambush, a tragedy, an unfortunate result of war. She paused, but it wasn't. Gasps rippled through the reporters. Camera lights flared. Lena's eyes didn't move. My daughter was intentionally reassigned into a combat zone she was never supposed to enter. Her orders were changed, her deployment manipulated, and her unit placed in direct harm's way by a network embedded within our law enforcement and military systems. Whispers surged behind the barricades. We have uncovered a domestic organization operating under the name Defenders of Southern Order, Lena continued. A white nationalist group, active for decades, embedded in sheriff's offices, local government, and even defense contracting. She turned slightly, motioning to Jason, who stepped forward with a remote and pressed a button. A monitor to her right lit up, displaying a folder labeled The Homebound Files. As images cycled on-screen, memos, transcripts, deployment logs, slurs typed in official communications, the crowd stilled. Lena kept speaking. They created a system to target non-white service members. Manipulated deployments. Fabricated disciplinary actions. Sabotaged careers. And in some cases, like my daughter's, they arranged deaths. A woman in the front row of reporters visibly covered her mouth. One man cursed under his breath. Lena's voice didn't shake. We have evidence. Documents. Video. Witnesses. And as of this morning, multiple sealed indictments have been issued. The men who laughed about killing my daughter, we have their voices on tape. Jason stepped forward again. Effective immediately, arrest warrants have been issued for Sheriff Dwayne Colton, Judge Dale Whitmore, State Senator Mitchell Briggs, and 5 others connected to the DSO network. Gasps turned to shouts. But Lena wasn't done. There are people in this country who still believe that a uniform can shield you from racism. That if you serve long enough, salute hard enough, bleed red, white, and blue long enough, you will be treated with dignity. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and somehow it felt louder than before. My daughter believed that, and it cost her everything. She stepped back, letting the monitor continue to cycle through screenshots, arrest records, altered deployment schedules, redacted messages Brianna had traced and decrypted one by one. The questions began flying from reporters. General Cole, do you believe this goes beyond Alabama? How far does the corruption reach? Do you think these charges will hold? Lena turned back to the podium, face unreadable. I don't think, she said. I know. Then she added, with the weight of a mother's fury and a soldier's resolve. And if it doesn't, then the whole country will know what justice failed to do. Behind her, Agent Mercer was already on the phone coordinating the raids. Within minutes, teams in Alabama, Georgia, and Texas would be moving in simultaneously. Colton was being pulled from his truck outside Wolf's Tavern. Whitmore would be arrested in his chambers. Briggs, already in hiding, had been tracked to a lakeside estate. The storm was already underway. But back at the safe house, inside a quieter room where the cameras couldn't reach, Lena finally broke. She sat at the edge of a cot, Brianna's dog tags wrapped around her wrist, her hands trembling slightly. Jason stood in the doorway. You okay? No, she said softly. And I hope I never am. He walked in, sat beside her. She would have been proud, he whispered. She should have been here, Lena replied. Her voice cracked then, not from pain, but from the raw wound of truth finally spoken aloud. They didn't break her, but they sure as hell tried. The road to Wolf's Tavern was cordoned off before dawn. No sirens, no flashing lights, just the quiet hum of 6 unmarked vehicles fanning out in practiced precision. Federal agents in tactical gear, weapons holstered but ready, radios crackling low. They moved like ghosts through the tree line, covering exits, watching windows. Inside the tavern, Sheriff Dwayne Colton sipped his morning coffee like he didn't have a care in the world. His badge was still pinned to his chest. His belt, heavy with a .40 caliber, sagged slightly as he shifted in the cracked leather booth. He didn't know that a warrant had been signed 5 hours earlier in a federal courtroom by a judge who had read the homebound files twice before scribbling her name at the bottom. He didn't know that his phone had been tapped, his email copied, his burner numbers traced back to a storage unit packed with evidence, hard drives, surveillance tools, unregistered firearms, all now in federal custody. And he didn't know that the very people he used to call sons of bitches in hushed conversations were already sitting in holding cells across 3 states. What Colton did know was that the bar's fried catfish sandwich would be half off at noon, and he had time to kill. He never saw the agents come in. They didn't yell, didn't shove, didn't even unclip their weapons. Agent Mercer stood in the doorway with a black folder in one hand and handcuffs in the other. "Sheriff Colton," he said, voice firm. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, falsifying federal records, obstruction of justice, and the unlawful death of Captain Lena Cole." The sheriff blinked, confused for a heartbeat. Then he smirked. "You boys got a badge to flash?" Mercer flipped open his ID without flinching. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Authorization from the Department of Justice. Warrant sealed and signed." Colton laughed, short and bitter. "This is a political hit job. I ain't done a damn thing you can prove." Mercer stepped forward. "We already did." Colton's hand inched toward his belt, instinct rising. But 2 agents were already at his side. Calm, controlled. "You don't want to do that," Mercer said. The pause stretched long and tight. And then the sheriff sat back, pride flickering like a candle about to die. "This ain't over," he muttered. "You think the people around here are going to take your side? They'll riot before they see me in cuffs." Mercer leaned in. "They've already seen the files. They've seen the photos. They've heard your voice laughing about killing a black soldier. And you know what they're doing." Colton didn't answer. "They're choosing to believe her instead of you." The cuffs clicked. Loud. Final. Outside, the agents walked him through the dust and heat toward the waiting SUVs. Reporters were already on the scene, their cameras rising like vultures sensing blood. Flashes fired. A woman's voice called out, "Sheriff Colton, did you conspire to kill Captain Lena Cole?" He didn't respond. He didn't look at the cameras. But his face said everything. Rage, disbelief, the collapse of a man who thought the system would always protect him. Back in Selma, Judge Whitmore was pulled from his chambers mid-session. His robes barely had time to rustle before they were surrounded. His gavel dropped to the floor with a dull clunk. Senator Briggs was caught just outside the state line, trying to board a private plane with a briefcase full of cash and a phone full of panicked messages. The dominoes fell hard, and Lena Cole watched every single one of them topple from a secure viewing room in D.C., the press coverage playing live on 3 separate monitors. She didn't celebrate. She didn't cheer. Her hands rested on the folded flag beside her. Her eyes fixed on Colton's face as he was shoved into the back of a black SUV. Jason stood nearby, gripping the armrest like he might shatter it. "They're going down. Every one of them." But Lena's voice was low, measured. "They're just the start." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him then, not as his mother, but as a woman who had fought too long to believe this was the end. "You don't build something like the Defenders of Southern Order with just 8 men, she said. "They were part of a structure. A system." She rose from her seat, slow but strong. "And that system is still alive." Jason exhaled, realizing the truth in her words. "So what now?" Lena reached for her daughter's tags and wrapped them around her palm like armor. "Now we finish what she started." And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not with joy, not with relief, but with the fire of a woman who had cracked the spine of the beast and was ready to hunt the rest. 2 weeks after the arrests, the courthouse in Montgomery, Alabama was filled to capacity. Journalists lined every hallway. Satellite trucks parked across sidewalks. The line to enter stretched around the block. Everyone wanted to be there. Everyone wanted to witness what many were already calling the trial that cracked the South. Inside courtroom 3B, the temperature was stifling despite the air conditioning. Rows of pew-like benches were packed with veterans, students, civil rights organizers, and families of black soldiers who'd never made it home. Faces etched with pain, with hope, with cautious resolve. And at the front of the courtroom, seated behind the government's table, wearing her full dress uniform, sat Brigadier General Lena Cole. She wasn't just a grieving mother now. She was the star witness in a federal prosecution that spanned 3 states and implicated nearly a dozen officials in crimes ranging from obstruction and fraud to conspiracy and unlawful death. And for once, the system wasn't turning away. The courtroom quieted as the bailiff called out, "All rise." When the judge entered, Lena stood tall, dignified, hands steady at her sides. Her medals gleamed. Her daughter's dog tags hung just beneath her collar, tucked in like a vow whispered under breath. The prosecution began with a name that everyone now knew: Captain Brigadier Cole. Her photo appeared on a large screen at the front of the courtroom, smiling, proud, alive. For a moment, silence swept the room like a wind. No one moved. Then the voice of U.S. Attorney Dana Wilson echoed across the room. Captain Cole was not just a soldier. She was a truth-teller. And what she uncovered cost her everything. Today, we begin the process of holding those responsible accountable. As the testimony began, Officer Brian Chin took the stand first. He detailed how Brianna had approached him, how she had slowly, methodically, uncovered the DSO network from the inside. His voice cracked when he admitted he was too afraid to go public before she died. "I thought I was protecting myself," he said. "But the truth is, she protected all of us." Later, an IT specialist walked the court through the files, deployment orders altered, digital fingerprints tracked to Colton's laptop, military liaisons caught communicating with unregistered servers. A veteran's mother spoke next. Her son had died in a training accident that, she learned, never happened. Just a cover-up. She wept when she said, "I thought we lost him to war. But we lost him to hate." And then, it was Lena's turn. She stepped to the witness stand and raised her right hand, the court silent but electric. When asked to describe her daughter, Lena didn't speak right away. She looked at the jury, then at the defendants, Colton, Whitmore, Briggs, now in orange jumpsuits, sitting behind their lawyers like paper tigers. And finally, she looked to the judge and said, "She was better than me, stronger, braver. She believed that service meant something, that wearing this uniform was a promise, that if you fought for this country, it would fight for you." Her voice didn't waver. But she was wrong, not because of the uniform, but because people like them. She nodded toward the defense table, turned it into a target. Lena's testimony wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was surgical. She recited the dates, the emails, the voices caught on tape. She described standing over her daughter's body, described the moment the sheriff put a gun to her head at her child's funeral, described how being black and powerful had become her daughter's crime. And when she finished, the courtroom sat in complete stillness. Even the judge blinked hard. That night, the clip of Lena's testimony went viral. Millions shared it. Tens of thousands added their own stories of racism in the military, in law enforcement, in the courts. #Justice in her name trended for a week. And 3 days later, the verdict came in. Guilty. On every count. Colton's face didn't twitch as the judge read the charges. But Whitmore broke. Tears slipped down his face as the gavel fell. Briggs tried to whisper something to his lawyer, but the gallery erupted before he could finish. Outside, the courthouse steps filled with people holding flags, not of a nation, but of a truth reclaimed. Lena didn't speak to the press that day. Instead, she drove to the cemetery in Selma, parking beside her daughter's headstone just after dusk. She sat in the grass, her jacket folded in her lap, the air still warm from a fading sun. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe. "Bree," she said softly, "we did it." The cicadas buzzed in the trees. A breeze carried the scent of grass and jasmine. "You were right to fight," she whispered. "And I was right to finish it." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded flag. She laid it across her knees, smoothed the corners. Then she sat there in silence as the stars rose above Alabama. Not as a soldier, not as a general, but as a mother who had turned grief into justice. And a nation slowly, finally, began to listen. They tried to silence her. They tried to bury the evidence. But in the end, the truth stood taller than any badge, and justice spoke louder than fear. This wasn't just her fight. It's ours now. If this story moved you, like the video to push it further. Drop a comment with your thoughts. What stood out? What made you pause? What made you angry? And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Thank you for watching. More stories like this are coming, stories that need to be told. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and stay loud.